afternoon and welcome to the next talk. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Pat Lam, the Connacht coach, a man who's used to the RDS in a slightly different environment, Pat, and by Mike Drew from OptaStats and OptaPro. Lads, for both of you and New Zealand winning the World Cup, it was a very good weekend.
Fantastic weekend. I think more the basis that the two best teams played, and it's more the style, and we want to grow our game. That's the way to play the game, and so it's fantastic for New Zealand to win that.
Now for you, Mike, it was one of your clients that won the Rugby
That's
World Cup.
absolutely right. It was a fantastic result for us. All Blacks are a client of ours. I'm not sure they needed too much help, to be honest, but they put on a fantastic performance, and what a tournament.
Give us an example of how you deal with the situation where a Rugby World Cup team comes to you and say, we need help with analytics.
There are various things we can do for various teams. Some teams will come to us and they won't have a huge amount of resource or anything that they can particularly commit to the cause. Others will come, much like the All Blacks, who have a lot more and will only need a certain amount of help. They may take just some data from us, and then they'll have their own metrics and their own use cases for that. Others will provide a full service of video analysis, data analysis, and other similar things. So there's a real range in uses.
Pat, can I bring you back to your playing days? Analysis in those days?
Probably just sitting in the bar talking about the game and saying, we're playing the Canterbury, the South Islanders, and normally from memory. Particularly the first part of my career in the amateur days, it sort of started to introduce once it became professionalism, but even then it's nowhere near as detailed as it is now, and it was more about chat and interaction.
Because when you were at Newcastle at the second time, it started to come in then, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly did. I think because money's involved, and a lot of these things, come at a price. But it's certainly worth it because it just brings the perception of the players on their performance and reality closer together. And but I think the most important thing is it's all very well having the data and the software. It's what you do with it, and in relation to how you're trying to play the game.
You were explaining to us backstage that when you came to Connacht initially, it was very important for you to get your own analyst man with you, to bring him with you. Yeah,
I mean, it's massive, because when I looked at the profile of Connacht Rugby, and they've been the fourth team in Ireland, and but they had a vision that they want to get right up there at the best. And I think the most important thing when I looked at the profile of the side, very young side, no internationals, lowest budget, smaller squad, but There's a saying that goes that the only sustainable competitive advantage that you have is the ability to learn faster than the opposition. And when I arrived, I met the analysis guy who's actually here, Conor McPhillips, and he was in a cell at Connacht Rugby in the sports ground, and no windows, nothing, and hardly any gear. And straight away I said, well, where's all the equipment? And it was like, geez, I had to go back to the RFU and say, if you're serious about Connacht Rugby being a competitor, we need to invest heavily in here, because as a school teacher, the ability to learn and understand what we're trying to do and get everyone on the same page, then we can compete against anyone. It gives us, belief. So that was a big area that we needed to change.
Mike, in terms of the development of this business over the last 20 years ago, 20 years ago it would have been impossible.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the technological advances of ability to collect and distribute the data have permitted us to sort of grow the business that we have and to provide better services to the likes of Pat. And the point he makes there about the use that they have and the context around that data that they provide is something that's certainly grown. The ability to interpret that data and have the right people in situ at clubs and at federations to actually take what we give them, interpret it in the way that they want to use it, and make it something which is actionable in terms of on-field performance, pre-match preparation and scouting.
Explain, Pat, the ABC.
Well, everyone knows SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So I have a simple principle around the ABC. So A is all about the assumptions. So able to look at a team and study what they're doing and we assume that they're going to do this, and this is where we can attack them. We formulate the whole plan around that. And then obviously as the players come in, we sell that to them, the key drivers of the team, and that formulates our game plan. B is all about we believe they might try this, although we've seen this could come up. And then C, which is getting closer to game day, is all about confirming. So the way we train, we train what we've seen, and so when they get onto the pitch, all it is, we confirm, yep, that's what we saw, they have changed this. And then when it comes to live, so we have iPads, we have our Connor does the live coding. all the stats and things that we see, and I'll be able to cut things live, when I present at half-time, it's all about confirming what we've prepared for during the week. So either carry on what we're doing or show that actually we can just adapt the game plan slightly here because they on the basis of what we've seen. And I think that's made a huge difference when you have a playing group that, you know, we got an average age of 23. We go up against teams that are full of internationals. But the beauty about rugby, it's a team game. And it's the collective. And if each individual knows his job based on all the assumptions we've made, this is what you need to do, this is what we need to do here, then all the stuff that that's given us all the data is just confirms it.
In the World Cup, Mike, one of the things that struck me was the halftime dressing room scenes where you were watching the England pack, for example, sitting around a video, watching what they'd done in the first half. How much of that takes up halftime, or is it only a very small part of the coach?
It's a small part, and this is to Pat's point before, which is a completely fair one, that what we do and what we're able to provide is something which is preparatory or reactive post-match and for scouting. There is a limited in-match live usage case, certainly. Some of the football teams we work with have our pro portal in the stadium and in the dressing room at half-time, and they'll take talking points from it. But generally speaking, the preparation is key. Teams won't generally be going away from game plan at half-time. They'll be looking to see if they're executing properly, and they might have one or two key numbers they look at during that phase. There are some examples of live benefits of this stuff, notably in the World Cup, as you mentioned. We were involved in a particular success story where Tim Krul, the Dutch goalie who was brought on specifically for a penalty shootout
against Costa Rica,
had access to all of the penalty data for Costa Rica from us, and as a result went the right way on all 5 penalties and saved 2, and the Dutch progressed. So there are real success stories within that, but there is a limited time to use that data in match, and obviously you also don't want to go away from coaching and execution of game plans.
Yeah, probably, you know, when we did a review of our whole season, we were starting the game. We conceded a lot of tries at the beginning of the game, but we were number 1 out of the whole Pro 12 and not conceding any tries after half-time. And people would say to me, geez, what'd you say to them at half-time? Often, I think it is my talk. But really what it was the analysis that we were able to show and change that for the players to realise, geez, we need to just adjust this here. And a lot of the things that we fixed came purely on the basis of what we were able to code and have live. And if we didn't have that, you're just talking. And when you got tired players at half-time, they come in and everyone's at different stages, getting their drinks. Sometimes they're not tuning into the words, but they can see the pictures. And they can see, right, okay, I understand what's going on. That's all I need to adjust.
That can be a very powerful tool, that liaison, that bridge between coach and player. If you're able to just show them video, show them data, people respond much more positive to that, I think, in our experience.
Yeah. So for players to buy in, the coach has to buy in initially. That has to be
you know, the head coach has so much influence, because if I think that's a waste of time, let's not worry about it. The players will feel exactly the same. But you know, we're talking about guys' careers, and you know, I have a simple philosophy when I coach is I want every player to come through and be a better person, but be a better player as well. And you know, for them, the greatest tool players have is their self-awareness. You know, if they understand what they need to do and they take responsibility for it, the data and the video analysis just doesn't lie. And probably a good example, when I coached back in Auckland, I had at the time the world's best winger, Joe Rokocoko. And he came back from the All Blacks, and his first couple of games for Auckland weren't great. And I had a guy, Issa Nafiwa, who's the captain here at Leinster there, and he was a young guy coming through, and he was doing the job really well. So very difficult, how do I drop the number 1 winger? So as I sat down with him, and I was able to go, right, okay, from our game plan, here you are, Joe, what are you doing? And he goes, oh, yeah, I should have been here. And I showed 4 or 5 clips, and he realised, and I said, well, Issa's doing this. So when I said, look, we're going to have to step you down, he goes, mate, no problem, because his awareness was heightened by the footage. And the media went crazy, the fans went crazy, how you dropping, but within the team, it was all dealt with, obviously, with the help of with the footage.
And how did he respond then?
Yeah, he was, again, because he knew. And I think even now with Connacht players, if, you know, the easy thing for me to say, well, yeah, you're not doing this and you're not doing this, but by asking questions, raising the self-awareness and say, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think you're going here, and what does the footage say? And it'll be a brave man to say they haven't played well, that's a 10. And normally, through them realising I'm not quite at my best, it certainly makes the job, because the toughest job for coaching is selection. because their livelihoods are on the line.
Players do pick up on that. I mean, these guys are professional athletes. They're self-starters. They want to improve. You don't get to that level of your career if you don't have that. And when this stuff is presented correctly, in my experience, they're certainly responsive to it. Yeah. The key, as Pat says, and I know you've got your own staff that you use for this, is having that liaison, having the right people in place. Yeah. And increasingly there are roles for people in clubs, in football, rugby and other sports who are skilled at liaising between the data and the coaches, understanding what the coaches want and need and presenting that to them.
Just give us an idea of the expanse of your business. At 300 teams now?
So we touch probably 400 teams, one way or the other. We're doing 40 leagues at our deepest data level, other leagues to a lesser data level. But the appetite for this is huge. Cross multiple sports, cross rugby, cross football, cross cricket, and obviously other businesses servicing other sports as well. So it's something which is not going away, is here to stay and is growing at a significant rate. And fortunately, we've been able to get away from what I think was a sort of the lazy moneyball discussion and into something which is a bit more rounded and an appreciation that data and analytics is something which is a significant piece of the pie for clubs who are trying to gain competitive advantages.
It's interesting you mentioned Moneyball, because the Brentford owner, Mr. Matthew Benham, has said he's fed up with this comparison with Moneyball, Brad Pitt and all that, but that did awaken a lot of people to this idea.
It did, and it's a fantastic book and a very fun film, and it was an important part of the evolution of what we're trying to do. But as I said, it's important that we move on and understand where we are now, and that was a book around finding inefficiencies and value for a team that was financially not as well off as others. That's still a key element of this, but to use it as a term to encompass the whole of data analysis and the whole of the way that impacts on coaching, I think doesn't quite fit in terms of where we are now.
And that story is from 2002, which is quite some time ago.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Certainly what Matt's talking about for us, and recruitment retention is massive, particularly when you're low budget. You know, we don't have Toulon's money, we don't have Leinster's money. You know, for us it's about the data that we're able to get for players worldwide, and particularly they target the young guys as well. We can get all that data, and we can look at things around their involvements in the game and so forth, and we still have our own scouts and the coaching ability to spot talent. The data backs that up, and also data with probably our own players and how they compare against other players as well. And all of that information goes and makes big decisions whether we'll keep a player, bring in a player, or let a player go. And the other thing that, again, the data that Matt's group opt to bring is direct comparisons for the teams. So when I go back to when you asked the very beginning of my day, we're able to now look at and say, okay, we're playing Treviso this week. We can compare them where they sit on certain tasks, and we get really good trends so that we can adjust our game plan accordingly. And it'll be totally different, say, when we play Leinster here at the RDS.
In terms of Moneyball and Brad Pitt and everything like that, I mean, where does this industry go from here in 2015?
There's a long way for it to go. I mean, interesting news fairly recently was the fact that FIFA in football have permitted the use of wearable technology for physiological reasons, which is following the same path that it went through in rugby. And that has tremendous potential benefits, both in terms of player health and also in terms of benchmarking, in terms of fatigue, player tracking. Your example before, when you were showing video to a player, if you're able to show, you know, their distance travelled, their sprints, their acceleration, and so on, you're able to manage players much better from a physical point of view. And also in football, that has a fantastic application for defensive actions, which traditionally have not been well measured. That's something which in baseball, recently they've had tracking cameras in all stadia, and they've been able to do tremendous work around using that to track defensive actions as well. So,
which had an impact on the World Series this week.
It certainly did. I mean, Kansas won the World Series this week, and you know they're a team who are one of the best defensive teams in baseball, and I think that showed. They're a team which has used analysis and built a team which fits their home stadium, and as a result, they've gone on and won the World Series. So this is something and an industry where the wearable tech, the tracking technology, and increases in the level of data collection, and also the way in which that data is used, to our point before about finding the skilled people to interpret it and present it to coaches, has a long way to go.
And that's probably like Monday morning is a big management meeting. And we've got all the different, we've got the strength and conditioning, we've got the medical, we've got the analysis group, and then we have the off-field, the operations. All of that data is then presented on how we manage our week and manage individuals' loads as well. So we can adjust accordingly to that data to ensure it's such a long season that we bring the injury rate down. The S&C guy has a massive input on all of that information as well, and it's all collaborative. We work out, right, this is where we're going to head, and then we meet after every session to see how that's all tracking.
And where a player might have a perception that he's made 10 tackles in a game, you can actually show him the quality of the tackle and say this was good or this was bad.
Yeah, and exactly. Like we have our own matrix, and we monitor every tackle, we rate every type of tackle, and if we're looking for a bit more physicality, and I've got an example at the moment. I've got a second rower who he's high in the amount of tackles, but he's low in the quality of the tackles, and so it became quite an easy decision to let him go, not play this week, and he questioned it, but we could facts don't lie. Yeah.
In terms of all of this and Jose Mourinho, how can you help Jose Mourinho at Chelsea?
Well, we work with them, and at the moment things aren't going so great for them, obviously. But yeah, I think that's probably quite a good example, because what you would look for there is two things. I think at executive level, if you were looking at this data, you would look at performance over a long term, not a small sample size, which this still is for Chelsea this season, and think perhaps, well, Jose Mourinho was a great coach 9 months ago. He still probably is. And then at a management and player management level, you would look at what's fallen off, what trends are you seeing in terms of your player performance, who has dropped off a level, who's missing your benchmarks, and so on. So there are a number of applications that teams like Chelsea will be going through now in order to try and use the data alongside all the other elements that they have to try and figure out just what's going wrong there. If it were up to me, it might take them a little while to figure that out, but I'm sure they'll be going through the process.
To wrap up, Pat, you're Japan against South Africa. You go for a penalty or you can go for a try. Do you use analysis in that state, or do you go back to your heart and say this is what we're going to do?
No, I think it's always dependent on the situation, and I think for Japan at that particular moment, a win would be massive, more than a draw. And if they lost, it was a full stage game. England, a bit different. Yeah. They should have taken that shot, but certainly for Japan, it was a great decision, and it's always in context of what the outcome will be and the effect and where you are at any given time.
So, in the bottom line, all this analytical work has made your job better?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, like I said, the only sustainable advantage you have is the ability to learn faster and the analysis and the world we live in. The players now, in my day, it was, have a beer, talk about the game, where now they need to, everything's quick. They need to see it, and to see it to believe it, so to speak. And again, the stats don't lie.
Thanks to Opta. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please thank Mr. Mike Drew from Opta and Pat Lam, the coach of Connacht.
Thank you.
Thank you.